it's an understatement to say that there's a lot going on right now in the world and inside ourselves. There's a lot of psychological turmoil, as well as the actual fear, like understandable fears about risks to our physical health and those that we love. But I wanted to bring up inner work at this time. I know it seems like it might be something out there. It's like, why do inner work right now? Well, in my opinion, it's the most important thing. Like, it is important, of course, to keep afloat of what's actually going on in the world. But I found the first few days, my husband and I have been quarantining because he came home from a trip, and so I've been in the house for almost 2 weeks, primarily, and going on walks, not getting close to anyone. But it's basically been interesting because the first few days I was reading a lot of news, and I felt I had to, because I didn't feel other people here, like the government here, had really caught up to what was going on in the rest of the world. And I was really, keeping my eye on what the scientists were saying, and New York Times is usually really good for scientific accuracy. So I was keeping my eyes peeled on some of those major websites, Johns Hopkins University, and then the Canadian news. But once we started getting going here, I realized, I can finally actually go back to doing kind of more of my inner work, meaning paying attention to my dreams, primarily for me, and working with the imagination. Again, that might seem really out there for a time like this, when we're going through so much, we're just confronted by so much, just so deeply confronted on so many levels. But I could also just give you a quick example. I don't know if you've read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, but it's one of my favorite books. And what he talks about in the book is that he was just surrounded by horrors. It was such a horrific experience on every level. He was seeing friends die. He was seeing just such disturbing things. People were killing themselves as well to just, because they saw no option. They felt so trapped. And he explained why he felt he hadn't been driven to that point. He could understand how you could get there. But he believed that what he did, paying attention through his imagination, he actually was able to survive because of such, survive those dire circumstances because of that, because of what he held on to through that. So he imagined the felt sense of being connected with his wife. He also thought a lot about his manuscript, which he ended up writing. It's the book that I'm telling you about. He even talks about imagining himself doing a lecture on the psychology of concentration camps. And he did that lecture, amazingly, in the place he imagined 1 year after they were closed and he was freed. So it's pretty powerful stuff when he speaks about how that work he did by using his imagination, working with his imagination, to imagine a future where he was free and where things had changed. I just think it just gives me shivers to think about, because that's in just, again, the just most traumatic circumstances you can imagine. And currently we are going through a collective trauma. So people are, beyond like the physical illness, and people are maybe starting to know people who are getting sick here. I'm not sure. But whether you have or not, you probably have people in your lives who are being economically, faced with such challenges of losing jobs or losing money in the stock market. And so I know that this is affecting so many, and that it's very real. And I also want to say there's something powerful also about working on the more subtle layers, the layers that we actually have a lot of influence with. And so I just want to walk you through a little practice. It may or may not be helpful, but give it a try if you're up for it. Closing your eyes and just noticing your breath. You don't have to change it. It's not a pranayama class. It might naturally change a little bit now that you're paying attention to it. But just see if you can be with things right as they are. And then as you settle in a little bit, see if you can find something that might be helpful, using your imagination here, to wrap around the heart center, sensing into the heart center and imagining if there's anything that that area needs that would feel supportive. So it could be like 2 hands holding you on the back, or 1 hand in support. It could be like something wrapped up around your chest, like almost like those bandages, but it could be like a warm blanket wrapped around like that, or a heating pad, or even some natural element, maybe like some big banana leaves or something that just feels like it's adding this sense of support. And only from that place where you can sense that support, and you can choose to shift into the awareness of that, then you might more deeply sense in to see in the chest if there's any extra tension that can be softened or let go of. I'm imagining a hand on the front of my chest and on the back of my chest. And inside that holding, I feel I can just melt a little bit. Just releasing some extra tension from that place that's just not needed. And now just feeling that extra comfort, the feeling of support. And maybe you notice again change in the breath with all of that tension or extra stress being allowed, given permission to let go a little bit if it would like to. I notice my breath begins to deepen more naturally into my belly. And when you fully allowed yourself to sense whatever came, you might even bring with you a word or words to describe what you noticed. And feel free to take a minute to write those down. And if you know me, you can tell me later, or you can always write me and let me know if this was helpful, or if there was anything interesting or curious that you noticed. And the power of doing inner work right now is that it supports us to face the other stuff. It's needed both to be able to feel centered while maybe taking so much in from others or from news, and also it's the key to visioning forward. Like in that case with Viktor Frankl, we saw that he visioned the future differently, and if we use our vision in the same way, I believe that it is possible collectively to find a shared vision that actually could serve the animal spirits and the nature and ourselves in a more harmonious way. Hope that was helpful.